Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Hello, and welcome to Thursday.
Welcome
to 136.
That was a big lead up, Seth, for not a lot of thing there.
Hey, that's
I'm not saying anything.
get used to it. Get used to it this morning, right? Just you know what I think, guys.
How you doing?
Excellent. There seems to be a lot of chatter across the Power BI spectrum this morning. There's a lot of things kind of going on. I want to point out a couple key ones here. A link from Melissa Coates on the diagram for Power BI data marts overview, I think is very relevant these days. I'll throw that in the chat window here. This is the idea of what is a data mart doing inside the ecosystem of Power BI, and how does that architecture live inside the Power BI ecosystem. So really good diagram. Highly recommend you take a look at it. Melissa does a number of really great training classes, diagrams. She's actually writing a lot of the documentation inside the implementation and planning pieces of the Microsoft documentation, working with Matthew Roach and a number of other really sharp individuals about deploying Power BI. So great diagram. Shows you a very clear addition of a SQL Server, analysis SQL Server. So Azure Analysis Services and SQL database basically being the backbone of that data mart thing. So,
and not just that, it took them 4.5 years with data flows to actually have documentation, not on how to use it, but like an enterprise solutions and enterprise approaches to it, how it works in the ecosystem. So it's happy to see that Melissa's doing this now, because it's not just what it does, but best practices approach, how the flow should go, or things you can adopt.
yeah, I hear a lot of people say, well, I have all these things and I don't know what to do with the data pieces. We're bringing data in, we got flat files. What do we do? Typically my design has been bring it all to the lake house, build it in the lake house, get it there, and then we'll figure out what to do with it once we get it from there. This adds another option for us to kind of look at. So it's we like it.
Yeah, I feel like we should have a call. We're getting to the point where we should have a Saturday bonus call weekly on where does my data go? Is it Azure? Is it data marts? What's the updates? What are the new features? Because you can't say there's one best approach, right? Right now with data marts, like where does that really fit in? So like every 30 minutes we should check in on Saturday mornings. Learn anything new? No, is it going to the same thing? Okay, and see how that changes.
That's really true. I mean, I was having a conversation with a number of individuals yesterday, kind of a community call with Melissa actually, and we were discussing that kind of thing. How do we do data movement? Where does data engineering really need to live? What kind of data engineering are you doing, and which kind of platform serves the best place for that? Is it inside an Synapse environment? Is it inside a Azure SQL database?
Right.
Or is it something else? Databricks, some other location where you have that data engineering. So I think the core of what I'm seeing here is there's a lot of options now, and now you can really tune your workloads for which server or compute that you want to use. Anyways,
I think the options have always been there, and they're just increasing. But something with like data marts, it has the potential to like disrupt how you've implemented things before. So
Right.
I like this. I'm glad this has come out. I'm glad she invested her skills in creating very useful diagrams that help you kind of grok or also articulate, right? Like what a change would look like, because data marts is one of those things that I think I've been excited about and still am, right? Because of the level of change that it could make in my current or existing process of how I go about developing data and reporting. The challenge with that, though, is it can be very disruptive if you start to go down that route, if you already have an in-place implementation or a process and a way to do things, right? And the benefit of adopting new strategies is that you get to use the latest and greatest. The challenge I always butt up against is, okay, I don't want to do 10 different ways of doing something then, but because it's harder for new people or people that are coming into the ecosystem to pick up and understand how to like, why do we do it one way for this set and not
Right.
this set, right? Or why is this working this way? And I always like to have good ideas or a good plan around how we implement things, but at the same time, is there something in a new feature like data marts that is worth the disruption of moving in a different direction with part of your implementations and things like that. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the hard
No.
part for me, is just
Yeah.
keeping that
Hmm?
streamlined enough for um longevity
Yeah.
in,
And
in
you, yeah.
solutions.
Yeah, the last thing is right to your point, Seth, where that we realize how important that is part of our skill set. Where I'll take that Steve Jobs analogy again, where the iPad, the iPhone, and the computer each had a specific purpose. It was better at doing some things than others. And with data marts, data flows, data sets, composite models, using Azure, like what is each of these services that kind of do the same thing better at one than the other? Right now, I don't know how clear that is
I,
because it's not just data volume, it's your team.
I like your analogy, Tommy, because I think you take it from a lens of, well, one thing, the reason why I like your analogy is you're comparing a bunch of Apple products to Microsoft products, which is very funny. So
Yeah.
that being said, you had a lot of discrete devices kind of initially. You had iPads, iPhones, and computers. But as the technology increased, as the performance of each of those devices increased, you saw people shifting away from, I think, PCs and more into iPads and iPhones. So I think as soon as you start seeing the interpolability, I guess if that's a word, as those devices are easier to integrate together, you're seeing what people really want to use starts to slightly shift. And I think potentially what we're seeing here now in the data space is a lot more of the tools are being able to talk to each other in a more automated fashion. And there now you're seeing this shift happening of, okay, what are people actually going to want to use that are easiest and most useful to them, as opposed to, I just always have to use SQL because that's what a database is.
Right.
We don't have to have this traditional mindset all the time of what it always has been. There's new options now, potentially. Anyways, yeah. Thanks, Donald. Interpolability. Interoperability? I don't know. We'll make up words as we go. It's pretty good. As they can work together. As they work together. All right, we'll move on. Enough of that. Another kind of, okay, this one I think is the biggest announcement that kind of came out this week. Jeffrey Wang, who was one of the founding developers, creators of DAX, the models, has announced a hidden function. What the heck? Never have I heard from someone on the Microsoft product team that there is a hidden function that's out there, and it's called evaluate and log. And so what I'll do is I'll put the Jeffrey's actual post on it. If you have trouble, I'm going to make this like an advertisement. This podcast sponsored by, if you have trouble making DAX do what you want it to do, and you have trouble figuring out what does that variable mean, or what is that statement doing inside that very complex DAX statement, you too should go read Jeffrey Wang's blog, because in that blog he talks about using this new function, which is essentially like console log if you're a coder, or debug print, or whatever it's a debug statement that takes all the information of that DAX statement, that function, like a sum or whatever, and just plops it out. It just spits it out onto it doesn't give it to you in a UI. It puts it in the traces of your analysis services model. So you actually have to listen to the traces of your AS model, either locally or in the service, and then you can see what the output is doing. So it's a little bit tricky to get the output out, but this article describes it all. Anyways, it's a really amazing feature. Tommy, did you read about it? I think, Seth, did you?
Yeah.
You heard about it, but maybe didn't read the article yet.
Catching up on it, but yeah, I mean, it looks pretty crazy, and more fun in the coming weeks, because he's apparently just going to keep blogging about the way which we can extensively use it.
But I think that
really cool.
I think this is a feat. Like, so the fact that it's coming from Jeffrey directly and not going through formal Microsoft channels, I think, so there's a couple reasons why this is happening. One reason that he gives in his blog article is there's some bugs with it. It's not quite working correctly, but it incentivized him enough to let people know that this is a good thing. This is something that is very useful. So much so that he also created a DAX debug output tool that you can also go get off of GitHub. which I'm actively looking at now to see if we can add it into business ops, because that would totally make sense. So you don't have to manage that thing. So here's the DAX debug output tool as well. Is there the link for that one as well?
One thing to note though, this was new as of the August release.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good point, Seth. Yeah. You can't get this in anything other than August 2022 release. So this is literally hot off the press. Came out, I don't know, the 9th or 10th of this month. So it's only been out a
Doesn't
couple
work in
days.
data marts. Yeah. So it's only desktop. And again, let's say it goes, your output of this goes into the interpool, so to speak, of what, but the tool itself, and again, I think Jeffrey and probably the Microsoft team is going to be just touching the surface on what this is going to enable for developers.
Yep.
Because again, we still don't know all the output. We really just know only what Jeffrey's tool is doing. But I mean, this is going to help so much from probably performance. I'm assuming it's going to have some of the performance there too. I think Greg Baldini is going to probably be using this.
Greg.
Bye, Greg.
Greg,
it was nice
bye,
to know
Greg.
you. We'll see you in
We'll
6
see you next
months
week,
when
you
you
know.
come back with a whole slew of new presentations. And
Yeah, exactly. Oh
yeah,
my
Greg,
God,
it's
yeah.
it's the 18th. We expect a full presentation by the 21st. Next Tuesday, we'll just switch up the podcast and let you do a full evaluate and log deep dive for us.
When Greg saw the article, he probably cried. He's so happy.
You know, it's probably, you know, if anyone can really use the full features of that function, it would be Greg.
Or
Greg,
find new features.
Or find new features how to use it. Yeah. I think this is a massive feature enhancement. So a couple things that indicate this to me. So another interesting feature of this one is if you go to dax.guide and look for evaluate log, those sneaky Italians, they've already got something out there that already describes how it works and talks a little bit more about the function as well. So if you go to dax.guide, and I'll try and also get the link for that one as well, and look up evaluate and log. I'm trying to type it in and talk with it at the same time, which is very difficult, and I can't even type it right. So see if I got, yeah, okay, there it is. Got it. I'll grab that link as well and put that also in the chat window, just in case you want to see a bit more information about that doc, because it's not documented. It's not in Microsoft Docs.
Yeah.
It's only in dax.guide, which I love dax.guide. It's the best tool out there for documenting things about DAX. It's amazing. Cool. Let's see here. What else do we have going on? Tommy's got an announcement. Big announcement from Tommy.
Not that big.
Viva Goals launch.
Yeah, I thought we weren't doing it. You poo-pooed it.
Well, whatever. Go ahead, Tommy. Take it away. Tell us the feature that you're so excited for that's no one's.
It's not just I'm excited. I think this is significant. So whether or not we're all going to use it. Okay, guys, Viva Goals has been released. You can do a 60-day trial in your tenant. And I started playing around with it last night, and it's goals.microsoft.com. That's their literally URL. So it's very intriguing on how this is going to play with metrics. Are they going to take away metrics? Are they going to tie in together? So don't know what the user story there is. Again, it's OKRs. There's an amazing book out there called Measure What Matters. It's kind of really based on that. It's a life-changing book, I think, for anyone in our space and just in the professional world. So read that book. And then Microsoft, they're doing not just the technology push here, but they have a ridiculous set of resources and guides on becoming like understanding OKRs too, which is really cool. So because again, you can't just use this tool if your company doesn't have any objectives and doesn't have anything to target. Honestly, I don't know how this is going to play with Power BI, but honestly, for us as business intelligence analysts, I really think some way to tie this in where as we develop our reports, and we'll probably talk about this today too in our main topic, but you know, it's all about what are we trying to make decisions on, right? And if we could tie that in with companies set target and set goals, because a lot of times we don't have any central location to show that. It's some PDF that someone shares on Teams. So
Yep.
OKRs, I think, are going to be really significant. I love the OKR framework, and we'll see where this goes. I'm very also concerned / intrigued how this is going to play with metrics now.
I think this is a interesting feature. The fact that I can't connect it to Power BI, I'm a little. Let's say I'm reserved. We'll see where it goes. I'm not sure yet. I'll give my.
I thought this was like the direct plugin to metrics.
It's like
Nothing right now.
It's like a
completely
cousin,
separate.
a distant, a
Viva.
second cousin. Feels like it, but it's maybe not quite exactly what goals are doing or metrics are doing. I keep calling it goals. Doggone it. They renamed it. They renamed it from goals to metrics, and I can't get over it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah, yes, Greg. They want more money,
Yes.
right? Like, so
this
I'm
is
not
this.
I'm not
I don't
familiar
like
with
that.
other platforms out there, right? But like the idea that you have an application that has deep ties into teams and meetings and can set structure for a year is really, I think, powerful for me, because in an organization where we do OKRs, OGSMs, et cetera, like you have your high level goals, you go through a lot of planning, you go through these commits and breaking things down for your teams to run efficiently. But what happens is decisions along the way of the year start to impede on what those overall objectives are. But if you have I guess, a system that is helping you drive to reach and meet those goals, right? I think you'd be much more effective as an organization. So, like, I think there's definitely a value here. It's just I'd love to see how that plays out with everything we were doing in metrics. But I swear, when metrics, like when they made the name change in that blog, I swear it was like, here's where all the management that data is going to come from, and it's going to plug right into here.
Yeah, I'm calling it now. In the next 6 months, Viva Goals is going to have that tie-in where it's basically metrics. You can point to a data point in a Power BI report in your tenant, and there's going to be a huge relationship between that. I'm going to call it today, August 18th.
All right. Well, we'll see. But instead, I'd rather actually have Microsoft developing more about the fields pane inside Power BI Desktop to make sure that it's consistent across the entire tool. But whatever. We can put out goals and Viva Goals and all this other fun stuff.
Come on,
it's never going to happen. I'm got to die on that ship. There are issues. There are issues you die on. I still would like to see that fixed.
You're gonna still poo poo and on goals, metrics, Viva Goals. It's not your bag, baby.
You know what? They keep building more of it, and they keep charging me more money. Okay. So not thrilled about that. Not loving give me goals for free. Viva Goals. It should just come with the stuff. I'm already paying an arm and a leg for Power BI.
All right.
Make it part of PPU. Make it add it to PPU.
I think I'm gonna explore this one further because I want a dinner somewhere along the line down here.
Oh boy.
Deal.
Oh boy. Well, let's stop talking about intro topics. We've got a ton of things going on. I guess we should probably just give the quick homage here to, there are two conferences coming up here in the near future. There is the Data Insights Summit in Chicago. All of us are going to that. We'll all be there. The event dates are September 12th and 14th. Use the code PROMO22 for $100 off your registration if you want to go to that event. We really recommend you join that one. That one's going to be very focused on Power BI and data analytics things. So I'll put that in the chat window right now. And then there's another event right behind that one happening in September 20th and 22nd, down in Orlando, Florida. This is the Microsoft kind of new conference for the Power Platform. So it's going to be everything. It's going to be Power Apps. It's going to be Power BI and all the other tools that they make. So those are kind of the key ones. So go there if you want a promo code for that one. There's a promo code in the chat window for another $50 off your registration for that one as well. So go get involved, go meet with other people in conferences. September has turned into a whirlwind. Everything is happening in September. It's like someone said, hey, we're going to travel now. And like, let's all do it in September. So it's going to be crazy. So anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there as well. All right. Enough of the intro stuff. Now we're done. Let's talk about today's article. Today's article comes from the Data Goblins. And we're talking about handling report requirements. Really like this article. It's a little bit tongue-in-cheek as well. So I do enjoy the banter and some of the little catchy phrases that come along with this article as well. I'll put that article in the chat window if for those of you who want to read along. This is what we'll be talking about today. All right, Tommy, kick us in here. Let's start some topics.
So this is Kurt Bueller, and all his articles kind of follow that that flow of writing. So the basis of this article that I think we all fell in love when we first saw it, it's like, did you see this article? Is basically taking a situation of existing data sets that whether in Excel or other people were looking at different visuals, like, oh, we need to put this in Power BI. And a lot of times, if anyone's done a migration of a report, it's usually, I see this, I want that in Power BI. And we go, okay, we'll do that. And we build it and it's fine. And it takes a lot of time because sometimes it's coming from uh, whether it's coming from an Excel report with BBAs and macros, or it's coming from some Power BI report server, yeah, back in the day, or it's coming from something in SharePoint. All these things that we just migrate the exact same format data and paste it on.
Yes.
What Kurt's arguing here, or he makes the challenge that, yeah, there's kind of a few approaches you take with this, and on a lot of them are not the best approach. And he talks about three main ones, and we'll go into that. But the real challenge here is when we do these types of migrations, we usually just say, we'll just take what you have and we'll copy it over. But
You
it's one
usually
of
say
those.
that. I don't always do that.
Yes, yes, Mike. Yes.
I
That's why you're Mike.
I'm always like,
Carlo, right?
let's slow down. Let's get some requirements. Let's talk
Yeah, and
about
I go,
what
what do you want? Let's just do it, kind of thing. So I don't even ask questions.
you want a pie chart? I'll make you a pie chart.
I'll make you a pie chart. Yeah. So yeah,
Is that how the Italians say it, Tommy? Is that what the Italians do when you get to
the
a meeting?
amazing Mike DiCarlo, ladies and gentlemen. So
Exportio strikes again.
It's turned into a dig.
Oh man.
Yeah, sure thing, Mike DiCarlo.
Oh boy.
Right. Yeah.
Oh boy.
But it's just, we've all done it. We've all just done
Yes.
what he calls a lift and shift. But it's really about how do you actually get those requirements, and how do you actually change that game, change the process of someone just wants a report.
I think we need to do the appropriate setup, because he does a great job setting up the story here, and then kind of talks through like the three different parts of this. So the story is you're given an existing report. It could be something that's already in Excel. It could have been something that was built in a different tool, and you're migrating over to Power BI. At the end of the day, there's an initiative to get it into Power BI. I need this data in Power BI. That's what we're talking about. And so there's three different methods that he kind of speaks to. First item that we talk about is the lift and shift. Basically, repeat what you already had, build it again inside Power BI. The second one is about building a requirements document, kind of defining what's going on. And then the third option here is kind of a co-creation workshop, and then doing a little bit of prototyping and kind of iteration on what the report looks like. And so these are the kind of three key, let's call it, different ways of being able to migrate something that was existing into something that is Power BI. So
yeah, the thing I also like is the fact that there are a lot of key themes we've talked about before that I think resonate or we agree with. So it'll be
100%.
interesting to see where we go. But what he does a really good job of is walking through the outcome. And if you're not familiar with why we, agree or disagree, or like some of these approaches and the results of choosing them, I think he does a good job of like providing the use case of like, because this leads to, and then there's a whole like a story behind this blogger. I love how he knits it together.
Yeah.
Unlike our previous episode where we were talking about only insights, I think this one ties really well together in like almost chapters, right?
Yep.
Like, hey, you can do this, and here's the story of what that looks like, or you could do this, and here's the story of what that looks like. And yeah, it's a really well written article. Just off the top, everybody should go read it, definitely. But
let's start off with I'd like to just kind of hone in on the three different areas. So first one, let's talk lift and shift first, and then we'll move on to requirements docs, and then we'll go to co-creation. So lift and shift. Have you guys gone through lift and shift activities where you're being brought that Excel sheet? I love it when people are coming like to me with like the Excel sheet and say, repeat this. And I'm like, why? You already got the answer. Why am I spend a lot of effort getting it into Power BI? Like, what's the bigger goal here, right? Why you're bringing me the Excel sheet? Why are we talking about this? So, what are your guys' thoughts on that one? Lift and shift.
It's funny here because he takes Excel, right? Just an existing Excel report. But I don't know about you guys, but I've done the same with old Power BI reports that were archived, or someone came in and did it, and they're like, we need this done a little better because things have been updated, etc.
Sure.
So this is not just Excel. This is someone's view. We even taken examples from like other marketing systems or other data systems said,
Yep.
I like this format. Can you just do that in Power BI?
Okay.
And yeah, a lot of people expect or have that assumption that what they see in that particular platform,
Hmm.
they just want to see that same exact thing in Power BI. And it's like, to us, it's like, seems easy.
So in the example, and one thing I'll say, Power BI is not good at tables, right?
Right.
Like the table customization that you get in Power BI is not of the same quality that I would see in Excel. If you build a table in Excel, you can filter by each column. You can, you know, have formulas across the rows and add kind of enhanced columns kind of in line there. Power BI doesn't really give you that ability to give you that rich in visual filtering options, I guess. And you can filter it, but you have to put a bunch of um, slicers around the outside. I mean, I feel like there'd be an opportunity here for someone to build a visual that is a slicer table visual, right? So basically, each column you bring becomes a slicer in its own right, and you can then filter down the data to what you only want to see, kind of thing. I think that would be a very useful visual. But in the example that he gives here, he starts talking a lot about um, there's kind of the misses here, right? Why, what's the outcome of doing it this way, right? You get the table, it's done, you push it out there, you probably get minimal use, or you find that everyone goes to that report, that Power BI report, and just exports it as an Excel sheet or a CSV file, and then does their own analysis outside of this. When I see this lift and shift of just give me the big table, to me that indicates I don't have access to the data that I need to do my job. So I just need you to let me formulate it into something that I can get easily and do some other analysis on top of it. And I think this speaks really well to his three key topics here, right? Number one is this is a missed opportunity to leverage the advantage of Power BI, right? Select this, see a smaller window of data. Drill through to another page to see characteristics around a particular product or detail. I think that's a great observation. You get a kind of a suboptimal solution in Power BI. One, for me, I'm not really loving the table experience in Power BI. That's just not my favorite way of manipulating data from a Power BI data model. And then you bring along with that report, when you lift and shift it, any existing issues, I thought this was a really good insight, any existing issues are just coming with the new report. So if there was challenges with what it was doing before, you get those same pitfalls. It just kind of gets, it's like when you build a product and some other person copies your product and they copy the flaws in the product even. Oh, that was a tooling die change on there, and when I found this other product that's copying us, and then lo and behold, they have the same defect in the same spot. It's not really structural, but as a mechanical engineer, I saw this all the time where people would copy our products, and you're like, wow, it's interesting. Not only did you copy our products so well, you even copied the defects. So interesting as well. But
You do your job super well.
Right. Good enough that people want to copy it.
No,
I guess.
no. What I'm saying is like you take it to the umpteenth degree of like
Yeah.
incorporating the defects.
Yes, exactly. It is going to be an exact replica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think what this outlines is, if I'm going to like snapshot it, is just lift and ship has a propensity to have misaligned expectations between both groups, right? And he drives towards that in the outcome of the resolution as well, which is nobody's, like, you may get a brief ramp up on people using the report, but they quickly realize it's not the report that they used. If, to your point, Mike, the previous report was the 60% of getting the data that they needed, and then they went and custom built all of their own other stuff on top of it, right?
Yes.
Or we're using a lot of the Excel heavy features that are very quick to do in Excel, not so quick to do in Power BI. So just because you've replicated a table and it looks the same way, did you catch the other tabs, or do you understand the use case behind how people are absorbing the data?
Yes.
So
I agree with that one.
But yeah, and I think the biggest point here, though, too, with this part is it's not so, like, obviously you carry over the bugs, but people are just, they have that idea of what they've seen in the past. And to us, are like, oh, great, this is easy. I already know exactly what to build. It's, in a sense,
Mhm.
built for me, but we still have to take the effort and then restructure in a way that works with Power BI. And then too often, that gain of now that it's in Power BI, it's not that marginal for users in terms of what they're actually doing with it. We're taking all this time to move something for the sake of moving it,
Yes.
and not because we're enhancing their experience
Yeah.
or changing what they can do with the data.
So I there are a couple other things that I think I'll mention, even though we may not want to dive deep into them. But like lift and shifts typically happen when you have either an unwillingness to change,
Mhm.
right? And to this point, somebody's driving we're going into Power BI, but it's got to look exactly the same.
Mm,
Okay, right? Like, really, we can't have that conversation. No, we can't have the conversation, right?
yep.
And
I've
that
seen
kind
that.
of stems to the other part, which is people problems, right? Like, whether that's you don't know how to engage and have those conversations, right? That could drive to a more meaningful report or report design, um, or the people that you need to communicate with don't exist,
Right.
or you don't even know who the audience of the report is, and nobody's providing you that information, then you may not have an option,
That,
right?
that's an interesting point there. The number of times I've gotten a report thrown on my lap where we just need to replicate this thing because someone's using it, but there's not really
Right.
the due diligence on who's using it and what are they doing with that, right? So it's kind of more of this. This is what we've had. We just need to keep it going, and I think there's an opportunity, especially when you're migrating from other systems. I've seen this a lot. So I've done recently a lot of migrations from Click to Power BI. And so we've been doing a lot of work around getting people off of an old system into the new one. And a lot of this is around, well, apparently Click is fairly easy to build reports in. We've got 300 reports. We have to migrate over. Do we? Let's sit down and ask the questions. Is there anything, are all of them being used? Can someone pull the usage metrics on these reports? Oh, wow. Not many of them are being used anymore. Maybe we should think about how we're building reports now. And that one report that someone built 2 years ago that was serving a one-time request may not be useful anymore. So I think especially when from a guidance standpoint, as you migrate from other tools into Power BI, there's always this. I think ask the question why. Why are we doing this? Is there a why? Is there time to ask that question? I think it adds success to the project.
That does play a little. We got one quick note on that. If you've ever tried to rebuild a Google Analytics dashboard in Power BI and with the same functionality, not fun. And this before,
Not fun.
not fun.
Nope.
They're like, yeah, just do this, and then I can
It
per
looks just like
14
Google's.
days.
Yeah, just get a date selector that looks just like this and does the same thing that Google does. Nope,
Yeah,
can't do it. Sorry, doesn't work.
and this was before calculation groups. Analytics does that like 7 days compared to the last 7 days, and it shows all those metrics. And
Yep.
it's like, yeah, so totally,
Mm-hmm.
you think it's simple, but I think this kind of goes along to that kind of next approach where he calls it the tell us what you need and we'll make it.
Yes. So the second item here is kind of let's go to the top of the article here so I can get the right wordage that he's using there. He's using the requirements document, building more around the requirements. And in here, I think it's quite interesting. He actually talks about bringing in the consultants. I thought this was an interesting phrase that he brought in here as well.
Bringing in the Mike DiCarlo.
The Mike DiCarlo. Bringing in the consultants. I hope I don't do this, but so talking about the list of requirements for stakeholders. So it kind of goes into more detail around, okay, let's define, and if it's interesting, throughout this article, there's these little expandable areas called requirements examples. And I really like how he kind of enhances those requirements. The first requirements were around building, okay, what are the facts? What are the dimensions? What's the page look like? Kind of thing, very basic. The second requirements here is more around, hey, I want to be able to switch comparisons. I want to have a little bit more, other requirements here. I want to be able to see target comparisons between this and this. And here's the key information that I'm looking for in doing those comparisons from a budget and actuals kind of thing. Yeah, thoughts on this one, guys? What do you think about the requirements gathering scenario?
Tommy, you're the survey guy. Come on, like you
Surveys are completely
talk to me about what you force people to do.
so well, this is honestly the double-edged sword where I think you could fall into the trap of if I have a requirement stock or a form someone has to fill out, we're good, right?
Hmm?
Right.
And
And
that's
that's exactly this is
right,
the scenario he's outlining, right?
Yep.
right,
You have some static documentation, like some form you send out to everybody, and that's how you get enough information to go build the report.
Right. And I think that's to Kurt and this approach, that's really the risk here, or the concern is you can have a requirements document. What fields? What do you need to measure by? What are your targets? Great. I have KPIs. I have measured by this. We're good to go. But as you start building that report, you realize you're missing a major factor in this, and you're really like, even if your requirement document said what decisions they're going to make, like, you could have all the questions outlined in that requirements gathering or requirements document, but you're still missing, like, the user filling that out is constrained based on the question and typing without having that discussion. They're based on how you word the question, they're going to be constrained on how they answer it and what you need. And that's where the problem is here, because it's either very open ended, like, hey, what decision you're going to make, where they can say something that has nothing to do with the report, and you kind of tie things together, or there's not enough detail at all. And then there's a back and forth.
I like the. Oh, so go ahead. Or sorry, Seth. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, the challenge in requirements documentation alone, right, is you lose the
Alone.
context,
Yes.
right? And John even made a point, he thinks option 2 can be effective if you have an established relationship, right?
Mhm.
But that brings with it the context that the individual filling it out, what they're providing, you have expectations, they have expectations, and you're synced. And realistically, the requirements that are being sent to you are nothing other than the information that you've already both well communicated and know how are going to work. So that could be very successful. I think this outlines, like, the consultant, right, coming in and Mike, to your point, we have 300 reports, right? What do you need to know? Okay, fine. Like,
Let me burn
it
it
would be
out.
like you saying, fine, you need 300 reports. Here's the requirements I need on all those, and send it back to me, and we'll get started, right?
Right.
And I think the danger of just relying too heavily, because I do believe in eliciting some form of written feedback, or like implementation,
Oh,
use
yeah.
case, strategy, etc., is that the devil's in the details, right? Like, it's a starting point, it's not the end point, right? Like, you need to follow up,
Yes.
because you're not going to understand how the business is using an existing report, or what their use cases are, unless you engage with them. And you can't do that just by sending out documents.
Yeah, and I think part of this too is we have to really understand, like, the requirements gathering again. While I still believe essential, that alone cannot be seen as like filling out a form to sign up for like a trial for something. We're like, here's my credit card information. Here's why I want to use the tool. Because what we're doing, like, yeah, we could build a report that meets all those requirements. You want to see, total revenue based on the rolling average 6 months. That's important to you guys. You build that, right? And usually people are not going to bulk once you have that end result. The problem though here is, once they start using it, that might not be something they're going to be using, because of, again, the constraints of they don't know how to answer your questions, or answer the questions in a way that is going to be help decision making. Basically, that translation between what they need and what we can build. They can have all the data in front of them, but is it actually something that they're going to, the difference is going to be relying on, right? It's like, here's my data. Great. Everything that I asked for, everything in the document. Okay. And because he talks about in the route too, like, what happened is usage would still be low.
Mhm.
And I think that's a huge part of just relying on, we have a form, they filled it out, they told us our targets, we can build that.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also like this. I think this idea here is, he talks about the initial report usage is very high because people are excited to see it and it looks good. It's got like a bit. It's, to me, it's a bit more. It adds the polish level that it needs
Yep.
for a good report. So they're, by bringing in the consultant space, you get people who are experts in Power BI and can do more fancy things. Like, I'm adding a bookmark, I'm switching some visuals, maybe I've got a navigation item in the report. So it's adding some more of those functional requirements, those UI improvements around the data. But we're still kind of, in my opinion here, missing the mark around where it, like, again, I've said this a number of times in the podcast, your data is a large table of data. Not all of that data is actionable. you're looking for the couple rows, the couple pieces, the aggregations of information in a way that you can say, this is an outlier. I got to do actions around that information. So to make more of an actionable report, I think there needs to be more involvement with the business team. And I think to me, this miss in this, give me the requirements only and let me go build it. I think there's a miss in the idea that in the output here, the requirements document, users are not able to really describe their needs and requirements. I say this all the time. People don't know what they want until they've seen it, and they're like, that got me close, but I'm not 100% there. So I do think this is more of like an iterative process. And if you're working with people, I mean, all the time, I'll do a live build session with people. I'll sit down and say, hey, let's talk about your data. The challenge for me is I don't know what your data looks like, really, initially. So it's helpful to get some kind of a report down, or at least some kind of a data model created so they can just see the data together. And then once I've got a couple dimensions and facts, I now understand the model. And then we can start talking about, okay, what do we want to build here? Oh, we need some binning. Okay, here's how we have to build some bins for whatever this data looks like. So I did this yesterday with a client where we did the exact same thing. We were walking through and we were building this bar chart, and we're like, that's interesting. What if this would look good on a scatter chart? Let's try a scatter plot. Okay, let's put it over here. All right, well, we could change this thing. And we kind of kept changing and picking different metrics and putting things together. And we kind of came up with one or two different versions of a visual that kind of answered the same question. It's like, okay, now you can pick which one you like. Which one feels more actionable to you? Which I felt like was a really good use of our time to be able to do something like that. So I thought that was really pretty cool. Any other thoughts?
No, I mean, I think that plays well into the next part. Yeah, I literally had the same conversation last week with someone where they're like, it's really important to see this field based on, this particular conversion rate, right, over every year. And it was this matrix, and we basically had the conversation of like, are you trying to compare those fields together, or like, does that matter if category A is 30%, category B is 35? Are we doing that? Like, what are you actually doing with that? And having that conversation, because they always thought that's what they wanted or needed. They're like, I guess that's not as important to see those two together. There's no decision from there. Yeah, I mean, again, we have to really understand our ability, and I think we've emphasized this so much in our conversations, our ability to word and ask the questions correctly and follow up with stakeholders and people that are going to be using these reports is such maybe the most underrated skill in what we do. And I think I'm realizing that more and more, because again, anyone can build a bar chart in Power BI, and you can learn how to do complex stacks or Power Query, but none of that matters if you can't translate or begin to investigate what someone's saying. And it's like, okay, what does that actually mean? Is that actually important?
Yes.
So
let me throw out go ahead, Seth.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say I have a little example that I would want to throw out to you. Something that was kind of in my mind around this particular article. Worked on a project, and I'm going to change the names and characters have been changed to protect the innocence here. But imagine Tommy owns a baseball team, right? And he's in charge of making sure that every seat is filled for every game, right? So if you're looking at, if Tommy's the manager and he's owning this part of the information around himself, he's looking at all of the games that he has in the future, and then trying to look at, how do I market these games such that I can fill every seat? What does that look like? Where do I spend my money? Right. That's what Tommy's trying to decide. And I think when I did a project around very similar aspects around this, where we're saying, okay, what is important here? The closer the game is, or the closer that the game occurs to today's date, the more full the seats should be in that stadium. So we kind of noodled around some ideas and started thinking about, well, how can we graphically show the distance between now and the new events, and then seeing how filled the stadium is? And everyone was like, oh, that's kind of a cool statement. But it was one of these areas where we had a big table that was kind of showing a bunch of data. It was very hard to determine, like, okay, these 10 games are undersold compared to the rest of them, because I could see, how everything else is filling out. So, hey, we're less than 50% capacity on these games that are happening in less than 30 days. Let's focus on marketing those particular events. Maybe that's where we spend our money. And so it was a really, I think, aha moment for the client where we really work together. And I think this speaks to our next topic here around, sitting down and, explaining like how Power BI works, really focusing on what drives action. What are we trying to answer? What's the question? How can I look at this and go do something from that? I think if you keep that in the lens of your mind as you're building, I think you get a much better output of the reports. And I think that takes us right into what questions are we trying to answer? Doing the code development. Thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I mean, we sit here a lot, right? So this one speaks to engaging
Yeah,
with the business, engaging with the business user, understanding, so it's audience, right? Understanding the use
totally.
case for this specific report.
Yes.
And he does a really good job of like picking out some of these insights from this particular report and gives great examples of here's how we would modify that.
Hmm?
Here's what that looks like in a visual. And at the end of the day, you're you're not just producing numbers on a page and not understanding the meaning behind them. You're
Yes.
taking it to the next level and bringing those folks forward into a tool that allows them to just get the answers that they wanted originally,
Mm-hmm.
but had to go find, right, in
Yes.
this other version of a report. So it's taking a lot of the nuance. What I'm interested in, what it piqued my interest just as you were like just segueing into this one
But word vomiting right now?
is,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
word vomiting
Uh-huh. Yeah.
is is these three implementations are like it's really easy for all of us to be like, oh yeah, I wouldn't do lift and shift. Oh yeah, requirements. Yeah, that's not going to work. Oh, we totally want to do co-creation. But this speaks to levels of expertise of individuals who are engaging in these activities,
Oh, good point.
because lift and shift is done by folks who don't know any better,
Or don't
typically,
don't know what the tool could
right?
do. Yeah.
Requirements are, I know I need to ask questions. I need to get some information from people,
Yes.
but I'm not comfortable enough navigating and driving into those conversations. And Mike, your examples are you being very comfortable in the technology,
Yep.
in the tool sets, in visualization, in questions and answers, engaging, figuring out figuring out like the meaning behind what people are telling you, and that is a learned communication skill, right? So
Yep.
like ramping up through here, I think we can't be so arbitrary in our implementation and say like, oh, you can't do these other things, because this also speaks to, I think, why you want to level up your skills so you get to the point where you're very comfortable in the co-creation space.
I liked how you characterized that because there's a lot more than just knowing the tool. If you're very tool knowledgeable, that gets you a good way there. If
I
you
would I would argue if you're very tool knowledgeable, you're doing requirements,
and
like
that's what I was
hardcore
that's what I was,
requirements work.
yeah. And
Yeah.
I think there's another aspect of this is the aspect of critically thinking about the data, driving for action. And I really, this is where I really resonate with this program here. In commencing user workshops, he's talking about, asking questions like, how are we tracking versus our target? What does that look like? How do we track to target versus for the whole fiscal year? What is that? And are we ahead or behind as a year comparison? That's an impactful number. If I continually see myself slipping behind month after month, we've got to make a change. We've got to either change our goal or we've got to start doing something different in our business to sell more or do more or lower prices or spend more money on advertising. You're now, to me, those kind of charts are driving for that action pieces, and that's where the workshop and the experience comes from. I would highly recommend, and this is what a portion of the Power BI Tips blog that I've done, which is go get training on how to analytically think through your data. A lot of people just produce reports. They're not actually producing insights. And I think there is training out there that can help you get through this place. And one area that I'll point directly to is Delta Associates, which is a company that I went through. And it fundamentally changed how I look at the world of data and lens of data. And I think squarely put me into a more comfortable space when I'm conducting these user workshops around what people want. It's not good just to report on the existing numbers, but tie existing numbers to budgets. Make sure that they're aligned. What does that look like as a function of what's happening in your business?
So therein lies the problem with this article. that I think some of the things that we're talking about that are essential to these soft skills. Every single approach here in every situation already has a predefined target or objective they're already meeting to, which honestly saves us a ton of time. There's obviously still the requirements gathering, but too often we're dealing with report requirements or report requests that there may be like, we just want to see year over year, but that's not really going to be decision making. And
Yep.
when you ask, do you have any targets or, like that you're trying to reach, like, oh no, we just, we want to see this just get a little higher, right? Like, and I will argue that till the day I die that you can't measure certain things that, let's say, are not already predefined. Anything can truly be measured or create a standard. It might not be company set goals,
Yeah.
but I'll give you an example. If someone's like, well, no, we don't really track, like we don't have a target for our website leads or how many people fill out the form. We just like to see how many people are doing it from where. Well, I would argue that you give the scenario to the stakeholder. Let's say your leads go down 50% a month over month in 3 months, and your leads convert this much.
Mhm.
That's going to affect you and the business.
Totally.
That's a risk. And so one of the things that because again, too often people, and this goes back to Viva Goals, right? In the sense where do people actually have these key results? And they're like, well, no, the company doesn't, we don't have a set target. So you don't have to have one. I mean, are we trying to set a standard? Like, hey, our rates always around 35%. Well, why don't we aim for 38 and we'll build around that? Like, or, try to increase that. Or
Yep.
what would happen to, the department or the rest of the data here if one of these numbers jumped 5% variance in a given month?
Yep.
And then, so basically, you talk about risk. You may not know what your actual target is, but at what point to what we have now, if it were to uh, like deviate, would that cause risk or actually cause concern? And start speaking in that language rather than what's your targets, what percentage over. And that's when I've seen people start thinking a different way, where even with volumes, where it's like we don't have a target for volumes, we just like to see. It's like that's not true, because there's probably a certain category that of like everything that's on the weekends that if we're to go over a certain rate would cause concern, because we know everything else that depends on that is lower, or that there's a lower conversion rate when things happen on these mediums.
Yes.
So so we want to make sure that our mediums that have that convert the best have the most traffic. That's just one example, but I truly believe we deal with no set objectives or targets a lot, and I think we need to do a better job of, again, start kind of defining that, letting them think about that, and that's part of that collaborative effort.
Yeah, I think we're as a final thought in here, like I want to point out a real particular scope of this article, which is you're taking a report that exists somewhere from a different platform, or to Mike, to our point, you're taking from Click in here.
Yep.
And having gone through these migrations, I want to make a few points that are really pivotal in making you successful in the future, because I comes from experience. We'll just put
I,
it
f-
that way.
I, I
Right.
feel like we need like the
I want to
warning.
right,
This is important
right.
information. This is important
So
information.
what's unique about reporting that already exists that you're having to replicate or refine is you need to fully understand everything about that report and the way people use it in
Yeah.
order to in order to get agreement that you're going to modify it, right? There's a lot of alignment that needs to happen between teams to set the current frame of reference in order for you to like be successful in saying this new report is now in the system and it operates the way all teams are expecting them to be. And this article is like very specific about the reports, but there are like the parts in here where it is absolutely imperative that you have requirements, right? For whether you're building those in here or somebody else is defining that with you, and you have the scope of the report, so you have future direction, and then you're documenting things as you go, because
Yes.
when you're shifting platforms, you're always going to have enhancement requests. You're always going to have people like, oh well, it did this, or they're going to compare your report to the previous one. So you're comparing between two systems, and if you don't have a framework for conversation, you find yourself in a very vicious circle where it's like, well, why did we make that change? I don't know. Tommy had a conversation with them and they sounded like it was a great idea. So we changed the visual to here, but nobody put it anywhere. Right. Like this creates this really nasty, like cyclical nature of like always enhancing a report because you didn't define like what is the purpose of the report. What are we trying to do with this? If we're going to make modifications, these were intentional. It's not designed to look like the old one anymore.
Yes.
So I would say it is always like co-creation is going to take more time up front no matter what. But you have to look at that engagement and all of these pieces as a benefit because you're going to not spend tons of time later on. Because if you don't go through these processes and you don't lay this stuff out, I guarantee you're going to punish yourself in the future because you're going to redo the report. You're going to change it.
Yep.
People are not going to be happy with it. You're not going to get user adoption, and you're going to spend so much more time on the report as opposed to just doing that work up front and getting 80-90% of the way through and making something that's valuable to the organization.
I think what you speak to there works really well when you go to the the last section and you open up the requirement and examples for the third option. When you look at those, you can see clearly there's three key, we'll call insights. There's three key insights we're trying to ask. Are we making our target month to date? And then, excuse me, sneeze. Whoa. And then from that insight, here's all the things, here's all the cards, here's all the data points that will help us make sure we understand, are we making our target for month to date? Here's those key elements. And I think this is very impactful because what you're saying, what you're talking or speaking to there, Seth, is if we align on these key questions, if this report is trying to answer this insight, that insight, and this other insight, if these are the three main areas we're looking to tackle, you can't argue with whatever comes out of the report. Yeah, it's going to look a little different, but you've already defined the requirements so that everyone understands, like, we're working towards these objectives. The old report, whatever it was, probably served some sort of purpose, maybe did some value or added some, helped people look at the numbers. But by identifying these questions, you're reframing the problem statement in a way that says, okay, I'm going to leverage this tool, Power BI, in a way that's going to help me answer these questions. And we all agree that these are the kind of insightful pieces of data that are going to help us move our business forward. And it speaks very well to what you were saying earlier, Tommy, about like the marketing platforms and like, I want to spend money and time where I'm getting the best bang for my buck. I don't want to spend a lot of effort, building reports and things that are, not helping me out in the long term. I think this is really good. Super great article. Really like this one. Highly recommend the read on this one. So, yeah, good find, Tommy. I appreciate you finding this one. This is a really good topic here. Well, with
Kurt's
that,
the man with his articles.
yes, 100%.
Get an RSS feed. There's for whatever reason, but Kurt, yeah, phenomenal set of articles.
And I looked at the article. I thought it's a very fun article to read, but two, there's a lot of little animations and GIFs and little icons in there all the way through. And I thought, man, there's a lot of time spent trying to kind of dial it all in there. So really, really good. Thank you for your super valuable item to the community. Really, really appreciate it. You did a great job on this one. So super fun, great read, highly recommended. With that, you've burned through a perfectly good hour of our time, your time, everyone's time. We're just wasting hours. We're gonna see how many people's hours we can waste every Tuesday and Thursday morning. So we really appreciate your time today. If you liked this article, if you liked what we talked about today, and you had things that resonated with you, if you learned something, we would love it if you would be able to just share it out on social media. Just let someone else know, or tell someone internal to your company. Let them, hey, I found this podcast. It's worth a listen. We recommend you check it out. So that's our only ask. We thank you very much for your time. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
If you are listening to the podcast right now on your jog, when you're having coffee, on your drive, when you're going to bed, make sure to share the word. Again, the best way you can help us out if you really enjoy the content. We don't get money for this. We love it, but we love your interaction, your engagement. Share the word with somebody. It helps us out a ton. If you're listening, if you can also join live. We have a really crazy chat today. So 7:30 a.m. Central, Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you're listening, make sure to subscribe on any platform that does podcasts.
It's going to be very funny because you're going to look at all these different companies, people who engage with the podcast. They're like, wow, Tommy signs in early on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He gets to work up a little early because they want to get up and listen to the podcast
Right.
first. And then, oh, well, I'm up now. Might as well go to work now. So no, that probably doesn't happen. I mean, I don't do that at all. I mean, on every day I get up at 7:30, way before, and do lots of work before the workday, typically. So that's not me at all. I don't do that. Anyways, thank you all very much. We'll see you next week. Cheers.